how do you balance the family business, the history, the roots, the legacy with how do we be modern and how do we continue to tell our story?
For us, I mean, the import side has been excellent, but I think the future for us is going to be manufacturing. So we are manufacturing, but it's going to be more, I'd like to see 60% of what we're doing to be on the manufacturing level. And that's going to be all high-end products for both the food service and the scientific communities. You know, we're going to be specific about what we build here. So it has higher margins, more customizable. We're leveraging technology. We just invested $2 million into new robotic machines here in the factory, including a robotic laser and a robotic folding machine. I think we're going to see a shift into manufacturing back into the US. We're feeling it right now, obviously. And I think that's getting back to our roots. You know, we were always a manufacturer. We weren't importers until, 2005. So it's going to be nice being able to bring that full circle in our storytelling.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to In Focus. Today, we have Ernie Migali from Migali Industries. Thanks so much for joining us today, Ernie.
My pleasure, Michael.
Well, we've known you for a while now, and it's just great to hear from you and have you on the podcast today and hear a little bit about your story and journey at Migali. We know it's a family business, but if you could just give us a little bit of background on Migali and where you're going into the future now. I know it's a really exciting time for you.
Yeah. So Migali, we're a 70-year-old family-owned corporation. My grandfather started Migali back in 1955 in a small horse carriage garage in the Queen Village section of Philadelphia. And back then he basically just had metal bending machines and machines that would punch holes. And he was doing a lot of cabinetry, stainless steel cabinetry for kitchens, hood systems, some back bar type work tables and whatnot. As he evolved, he hooked up with some local refrigeration engineers, and they started building custom refrigeration probably throughout the 1960s. When my father came into the business 1970s, he started to really standardize the product to make and start moving away from customized refrigeration. So they bought a 80,000 square foot facility in Camden, New Jersey at the time, and started building the standardized refrigeration. So basically everything that you see in the back of the kitchen, from the upright type models under counters, food prep stations, glass door, merchandising, refrigeration. He really just carried the baton and really grew the business throughout the 70s and 80s. We started doing a lot of OEM work for other larger brands like Ingersoll Rand and Hussmann, Victory Refrigeration. So you saw our equipment into a lot of big chains throughout the U.S., like Papa John's, IHOP, Schlotzsky's Deli, Subway. We did a lot of different type of chains throughout that time. When I came to the business, it was really in a precarious, the industry was in a precarious place. I graduated from college 2002, and that's about the same time China got into the WTO. We start seeing a lot of imports from Korea, China, Mexico. And we saw our business starting to shrink because it became very competitive. Pricing was 30-40% lower than what we can compete on. So my first objective getting out of school, actually I had a little stint between 2002 to 2005 in Nashville, Tennessee.
Represent.
Well, yeah, represent, man. Nashville, Twangtown. In 2005, I flew out to China and I started visiting factories out there to build partnerships to start building some of our equipment in China. And then the Great Recession hit 2008, 2009, and it really just became apparent, hey, listen, customers are looking for a commodity type item. We need to offer that. So we started to really slow down manufacturing here in the U.S., push a lot of that manufacturing overseas, but then refocus back here in the U.S. just on high-end commercial products and scientific products, which we were beginning to get into at the time. So building scientific refrigeration for storing blood, vaccines, pharmaceutical products of that nature. We were working with a local company at that time called Gem Scientific. We were building a product for them. They ended up actually going belly up during that recession. And then we absorbed some of their employees, and then we launched Migali Scientific at that time.
Wow.
So it was apropos in the timing. So we had the commodity stuff being built at the time in China. Now the high-end products being built here in New Jersey. There was a lot of research development, time in building new molds and getting started up again. And slowly but surely, we were able to fulfill some of the orders that this company, GEM, wasn't able to fulfill, and grab some of that market share in the healthcare sector of the scientific market. We've seen tremendous growth since then on the import side and on the scientific side. Right now we're seeing another shift. Obviously, the craziness that's going on in the marketplace, tariffs. We started moving our operations out of China around 2021 and into Thailand. So, which is really nice because we're really protected from all these Chinese tariffs that we're seeing right now. And most of our products that are coming in from overseas are being built in Thailand at the moment. Scientific products still built here in the U.S. We're moving into the life sciences division of our community of the scientific world. So you have healthcare, which is all going to be clinical, refrigeration for storing blood, vaccines, pharmaceuticals, mostly found in hospitals, doctors' offices, clinicians' offices, ambulatory sites, places like that, blood banks. And then you also have the life sciences, which is going to be in research, facilities, universities, government, organizations like the NIH, biorepositories that are these large buildings that just store, gene therapy products, blood and research products. And it's just freezers for, you're talking about like 500 to 1,000 freezers in each biorepository.
Oh, wow.
We're now starting to move into that space as well. I just hired somebody from Panasonic, and he's been doing a really great job in opening up a lot of doors. So yeah, that's where we're at right now. We're bringing in some new technology on the refrigeration and cooking side. Particular refrigeration, we're beginning with variable speed compressors. So typically in the past, a compressor is going to be turning on and off throughout the day. There's a lot of energy consumption when you do something like that. What we're doing now is we're using a variable speed. So that variable speed is the RPM on the compressor is going really low. When it's not being used, the refrigerator, then it speeds up. So it's very quiet, it's very energy efficient, and most of our models are moving over to that variable speed compressor technology, which has been really exciting. On the cooking side, we have a new product called our Infinity Burners, where you're going to be able to save up to 25% in energy savings on all your gas burners. So on a typical 6-burner range within a restaurant, you're going to see around $1,500 a year in energy savings and gas savings that's going to be, saved and not put and not spent on gas. So it's a really great opportunity to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace and to advance the technology and the product offering that we have here from our portfolio.
Wow. Thanks so much for that background. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so curious, Ernie, kind of thinking through that whole trajectory from when you joined and to what you're doing now. And I know a lot of the work that we've done together, I know that there was a lot of focus on like the energy savings, like environmental factors, things like that. What did you all do from a brand storytelling standpoint to compete as you saw some of those economic factors putting pressure on you? And okay, now these other countries are starting to import things into the US. We need to compete on a financial level, but we also need to position ourselves like family owned, quality. Like, can you talk a little bit about that? How you approach that standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I've always told everyone here that, our greatest, asset is our brand and our story. We have a fantastic story. My grandparents are the children of immigrants who came with nothing. Your typical American story of, I don't want to say rags to riches, but you're talking about someone who my grandfather had an 8th grade education and started and built a very successful manufacturing company without any engineering degree, without, any formal real education on the collegiate sense. And my father as well, taking the baton and growing the business. We have a really great story to tell, and I think that is one of our greatest strengths. It builds a sense of security for our customer. They know that they can trust us. We've been around a long time. Our name is on the equipment, our last name. That means a lot to them. They know that because our last name is on the equipment, and we're so proud to be Migalis and to have the last name on there, that when there are times when there are issues, if a quality issue does pop up, or if there's a service issue, customer service issue, we're fast to fix it because it is our name on the line.
Yeah.
Our name. When we can translate and communicate that story to them about our history and how much family means to us and how much that name means to us on every single unit that we put out there, I think it really gives them a warm, fuzzy feeling. So when it comes down to pricing, customers are willing to pay just a little bit more for our product compared to the brands that are coming in from overseas that they might not be as familiar with.
That's really interesting. And Michael and I were just talking about Migali prior to this interview, where we were talking about how I think it was probably back in 2017, 2018, Ernie, when you invested in building out the interview space and putting that set together, and we assisted putting some of those pieces together. And we're like, man, Ernie was really ahead of his time for this, because now we're seeing such a huge upswing of thought leadership type content being produced. And it was just really cool that you had the foresight to want to do that type of stuff. We put our brand on display. So it was, you were ahead of the curve, so to speak, in that way.
Yeah, if I had like 2 or 3 people here during that time, it would have been a lot easier to actually focus more on that. But the desire was there. It was just the amount of resources and bandwidth has always been the problem.
Yeah. Actually, I was in a bar recently, Ernie, and I saw a Migali refrigerator. So I'm not sure. So you do mostly scientific now, right? Or are you still doing?
I would say 75% of our business is still on the commercial side.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
I said, is that a good refrigerator? I know the guy who owns the company, and they said it's a fantastic refrigerator. And I said,
awesome.
Good. But that's all I wanted to hear. So
Great. Yeah. Because and if he said it wasn't a fantastic refrigerator, you just don't give him my phone number. That means he'll be calling me in the middle of the night. No, I'm teasing. If there was any problems, that we'd want them to call anytime to fix it.
Well, I remember one of the things that we did on some of the video work together was highlighting the non-fog element. Like when a refrigerator's in convenience store, the products need to be well lit, no fog on the glass.
Yeah.
So whenever I walk into a convenience store and I see that there is fog, I'm like, I bet that is not a Migali. And then whenever I see the Migalis, I know that they're crystal clear. So it's a tried and true promise.
Absolutely.
So as you've made some of these brand shifts over the time that you've been part of the company, Ernie, what are some of the things that you do to tell that story? I know that you talked a lot about that being a core component of what makes your brand different, unique. I know over the years that we've known that you've gone to trade shows, you've done different brochures, you've done video work, you've done a bunch of different things. What do you find is the most effective way to convey that story? Is it one-on-one conversations that your sales reps are having? Like, how do you communicate that?
I think relationships are always number one in our business. I think to communicate that, the easiest way is to be able to effectively first communicate to our sales reps this story, and that they buy into the story. If we can get them to buy into the story and actually remember and recall the story in the proper way, that's what's going to be the most effective. But that's also the most challenging sometimes. We have so many different reps, dealers out there, hundreds out there at this point. And communicating that in an effective way to them, and them being able to regurgitate that information back to the buyer has been the most effective. And when we measure the sales reps that have seen the most growth, they tell the story in a very compelling way and accurate way. So I think it's one-on-one more than anything. But they need the resources to do that. Number 2, I think, is going to be like video has been really, really strong. Video, and then also like LinkedIn. Having a stronger presence on LinkedIn has been something that I'm surprised that has really brought in a lot of business for us that we weren't tackling so much just a few years ago.
That's so interesting. So I'm curious to pick that apart for a second, just because a lot of the folks that listen to this program are brand managers, marketing decision makers within bigger organizations that are looking to figure out how to spend their budget and stuff like that. So what specifically on LinkedIn, is it sharing company updates? Is it like what is happening in that platform?
Yeah, I think it's a networking platform. So I think it's sharing company information and updates, new features, updating customers on trade shows. It seems that they check that more than they check, if we were to do like an email blast. So we still do the email blasts and they work just fine. But you have the opportunity to see somebody's face. You have the opportunity to see what they do, what position they're in, and you end up running across them at some of these networking shows, and you already could put a name with a face. And there's a soft warm up to the actual first interaction with the person. So that's always been really helpful. The guy I just hired from PHC, he has 35,000 followers on LinkedIn. And I saw the power of his networking on LinkedIn, what that has brought to our business, and being able to talk to some of the, most prominent, research companies out there that are buying our scientific refrigeration, and him being able to communicate to them in a way that they are always being updated with our information. It's been really helpful to us. So yeah, I've been more interested in how we can utilize and leverage the LinkedIn platform a little bit more.
Yeah, such a powerful platform. I think that's like Steven said, a big platform that our audience uses. So
yeah, absolutely. Cool. I mean, to me, it's almost like, the president of the United States, sends out a tweet or something and it goes to millions of people. That platform in some sense is similar to LinkedIn, but on a much smaller scale for us. It just enables you to connect with people in ways that you weren't able to prior. To me, I always looked at it as like, Facebook for business, but I think it's much more powerful than that.
Yeah. Well, and what we're seeing from a lot of our doing things for ourselves, but also for our clients too, is it kind of softens up an intro too. Like if people have seen a video clip of you talking, have seen you maybe talking with a guest that they recognize, or have seen a company update, and then you send them a message, and then you send them an email, like it's not as weird if they have that familiarity there.
Exactly.
So I know in the past, Ernie, we've done different types of video projects, and there was one anecdote that I thought was really funny as reflecting on our working relationship before, which was, I was curious, do you guys still have that like refrigeration setup on display in your kind of front room area there? You did like a
little showroom, little showroom that's circular, with the mid-century lights. Yeah, we do have that. Yeah.
So the backstory to that, which I don't know if I told you, but like the day before, you had sent us like a schematic of like, okay, we want the refrigerator here, we want some like cabinetry and tables and things, and they need to look obviously medical or like scientific appropriate. And so a bunch of our employees went to IKEA, and we just scoured like all these IKEA cabinets, loaded up a car, and then drove to your office the next day. And I think
built a pharmacy, compounding pharmacy in my office. So.
Yes, we were like using like what are those
Allen
keys and like putting.
We still got a couple of those cabinets around.
That's funny. So what is the, I know you talked a little bit about this in your intro, but what is the future, where you're going? Like how do you balance the family business, the history, the roots, the legacy, with how do we be modern and how do we continue to tell our story?
Yeah. For us, I mean, the import side has been excellent, but I think the future for us is going to be manufacturing. So we are manufacturing, but it's going to be more, I think it's going to, I'd like to see 60% of what we're doing to be on the manufacturing level.
Wow.
And that's going to be all high-end products for both the food service and the scientific communities. We're going to be specific about what we build here. So it has higher margins, more customizable. We're leveraging technology. We just invested $2 million into new robotic machines here in the factory, including a robotic laser and a robotic folding machine. I think we're going to see a shift into manufacturing back into the U.S. We're feeling it right now, obviously. And I think that's getting back to our roots. We were always a manufacturer. We didn't have we weren't importers until 2005. So it's going to be nice being able to bring that full circle in our storytelling.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's so funny. I know, Michael, you might have another question or two, but every time you say import, Ernie, I just watched the Seinfeld episode where, I don't know if you watch Seinfeld or have.
What's he do? Import.
Just imports, no exports. He's an
Yeah.
importer.
Yeah. Very vague. Very vague. Yeah. Like, what do you do? I'm an entrepreneur, and then we just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Ernie, which is related to the manufacturing side. So would you just manufacture for Migali, or would you manufacture for other refrigeration companies as well?
Yeah, we've done both throughout the years. Right now, we're primarily focused on the Migali brand, but do we manufacture for other brands? Yes.
And when you think about that from like a marketing and sales standpoint too, that's obviously different than marketing a solo product. Now that's offering a service to clients. Would you market that in the same way traditionally that you would market an individual product, just like you were mentioning through LinkedIn, or is that mostly through connections? How does that work?
Something like that often comes up in conversation. Honestly, we don't put it out there that, hey, we want to build for everyone. And we honestly, we have had companies ask us to build for them, to manufacture for them, and we declined. Wow. Because we didn't feel like strategically it was going to be a good thing for us long term for the Valley brand. But there's companies that serve different sectors within the food service and scientific industries that we're not selling to. So in those cases, when they come to us and they say, "Hey, can you build this?" Yeah, we're more than open to looking into that. And even products outside of what we typically do. I always like to keep an open mind because we don't know where things can take you and where the opportunities are and where the margins are at. I just had a company come to me. They asked us to manufacture the hydroponic farms on like a commercial hydroponic farms that basically inside a restaurant. And it'd be, maybe 10 rows of growing different types of herbs and plants. And, it's something that could sit inside of a kitchen and, and the chef in the kitchen would have access to fresh plants and vegetables. So, we're open to looking at things like that and to consider that
cool.
Really something we can build here because it's a nice niche product. I think the margins would be nice. It's always a question of, is there going to be enough volume for it to make sense for us?
Yeah, wow, that's so cool. I mean, that's something that I just wouldn't even cross my mind, but that's so cool that you're doing that.
Ernie, what is the sales cycle for these big enterprise sales? Is it like a relationship is there, conversation starts, and then 2 years before product happens? Like, I would imagine it's long, right?
Yeah. I'm finding that the sales cycle on the scientific side is a lot longer than it is on the food service. But, on both sides with refrigeration in particular, you're going to have 50% of all sales is going to be replacement. So it's going to be, do you have it in stock and how fast can you ship it and what's your price? Because my unit just went down. You have that on both sides. The other 50% is going to be these projects, building out new stadiums, building out a new hospital, building out a new biorepository. Those often start with friendships, conversations, networking years before. Otherwise, you're just not going to get on the tender and you're not going to get the opportunity to actually quote.
And is it like a typical RFP process where these people put out, 3 bids and we need, or is it more like, hey, you're our preferred?
It can be, but usually if they're putting out 3 bids, there's already one guy that's already sitting pretty close to the customer that's going to get the bid as long as they're within 5-10%.
Huh.
So
Interesting.
you want to be that guy. And
Yeah.
you want to be the guy that actually is specified on the bid. So a bid is getting sent out. You want to be, you already want to be spec'd out on the architectural drawing so that you're the premier line that these other customers have to match,
Interesting.
size wise, features and benefits. And if they can't, then they really can't, bid on the project. So I think that's the key is really being on the forefront with the architects, the planners, the specifiers.
And that brings up another interesting conversation. So to what extent are you working with the other vendors that are providing services to build out a facility? Like you mentioned architects, like blueprints and designers and I know that there's a lot that goes into that. So and like waste like removal and all that, like what does that play in your role in your business?
It's really building the relationship with the architects and planners, providing them with all the detailed drawings and information that they need. I think on another level, like, from what I'm hearing from you, like there's other ways that we could build partnerships with other companies that don't build our products, that honestly buy a fair amount of our products. For example, we've had a relationship with a cabinet manufacturer, like those IKEA cabinets that you assembled. But for pharmacies, right? For pharmacies. And they just build the cabinetry for the pharmacy. Well, while they're building the pharmacy, they really need to specify a refrigerator that fits in between those cabinets. So you always buy the refrigerators from us to fit inside their cabinets.
Yeah.
So if we're doing, several hundred new pharmacies a year, we have a relationship with them to be their premier refrigeration company to fit within the specifications of the designs for their cabinets.
Got it.
Wow.
Okay. So like referral partner base, like you build up tangential
It's
relationships.
not just referral. I mean, they're buying and selling it, so they're making a nice profit off of our product too.
I see.
They're offering the full packages at that point.
That's really interesting. What would you say that you've learned in being in this role do you think would be of benefit advice-wise to brand marketers in non-industry role, like in roles that are not in your industry? Because I know there's a lot of specifics to refrigeration, but what's maybe some general pieces of advice from what you've seen in the marketing process, the sales process?
I think be consistent about your messaging, be consistent about your brand. It's easy to become too creative and get off of the original idea and story of your brand. So I think that consistency there and that consistent message is super important. The consistency of, in the past we've done like, advertisements in magazines. We'll do it for 2 months, 3 months, and then pull out, then do it another 2 or 3 months a year later. I mean, that's not a good thing. We to make sure that if you're going to stick with something to get any legs, you gotta have a longer budget with that. We've learned that over the years that if there's any effectiveness, you kind of need to stick with it for quite some time.
Amen to that.
Yes.
Right, you want that customer keep on coming back, but it's true though. It is true. Yeah. Was there any other details to that question that you want?
No, just general advice. I
Excellent.
think that's great. I'm trying to think. Those were all the questions I had, Michael. I'm not sure if you have any kind of final wrap-up questions or Ernie, anything else you wanted to share.
No, I mean, listen, I'll put a plug for you guys. You guys have always given us a high quality product, and it's always been top of the line compared to, other agencies that I've used out there throughout the years. And so really appreciate your hard work, and you guys have always done a great job for us. So if anybody's out there considering 7 Wonders, give them a shot. You won't be disappointed when it comes to the final product. That's for sure.
We did
Thank
not
you.
pay him to say that.
Yeah.
Oh, baby. I'm not paying this or that whatsoever.
Thank you for the nice words, Ernie. It's been great having you on the podcast today. Really enjoyed speaking with you and learning more about the business again. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For sure.